We were 32 minutes into the pitch when it happened. The room smelled like coffee gone cold and cheap carpet glue. My palms were sweating into a borrowed clicker, the kind that stuck right when you needed it to glide. I was walking through a cost breakdown slide. Nothing dramatic, just numbers. Then I heard my supervisor, Jonas Price, grumble something behind me. I paused. He corrected my data, wrongly, confidently. I didn't let it slide. I turned back toward him and said, "Actually, that figure was confirmed by finance on Tuesday." The room shifted. People coughed. Jonas tilted his head like a dog sizing up a threat. "Is that so?" "It is," I replied, not smiling. I wasn't trying to humiliate him. I just didn't want the numbers misrepresented. But that moment, one sentence, was enough. His face flushed, and then, it was fast. His hand, my cheek, a sharp crack like bone meeting concrete. I didn't hear the gasp until after my vision blurred. No one moved. The intern, Ezra, reached for his phone. Everyone else froze, like they were debating whether acknowledging it would make them complicit. My clicker dropped, so did I. I didn't scream, I didn't even cry, I just felt myself vanish. The beeping was the first thing I heard when I came to. Steady. Predictable. I was in a hospital bed, face swollen, jaw wired. A nurse, early 40s, eyes that had seen too much, hovered over me, adjusting a saline drip. She smiled gently and said, "We tried your emergency contacts. Your mother picked up." I nodded, slow. "She said she's at your sister's birthday dinner. Asked if we could update her tomorrow." That was it. No follow-up, no questions, just dinner. My father didn't come either. Neither did Clara. I lay there, half conscious, half numb, wondering if I was somehow imagining this. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe this wasn't real. But the wires in my mouth weren't a dream. The IV wasn't fiction. It wasn't just that they didn't show, it was how natural it felt for them not to. The physical pain faded in and out, dulled by meds, but the ache behind my ribs stayed sharp. I tried to push it down. I told myself, maybe they thought I was okay. Maybe they didn't understand. But deep down, I knew. They understood. They just didn't care to care. I don't know why I reached for my phone. Habit, maybe. Distraction. The screen blinked awake. 8 notifications, 1 tag. I tapped. Clara had posted a photo. Mom, Dad, her husband, her kids, a few neighbors. Everyone dressed up. Matching outfits, bright smiles, holding glasses of wine. The caption said, "Family first, love celebrating joy without drama." My stomach twisted. I read it again. Then a third time. Without drama. Like my assault was an inconvenience. Like my existence was a problem they'd finally escaped. They knew I was here, knew where I was. And still, they smiled for a camera while I bled alone. I couldn't speak. Not literally, thanks to the wiring, but even if I could, what was left to say? I locked the phone and set it face down. The punch broke my jaw, but their absence, that shattered something else. I didn't sleep much that night. The morphine gave me short mercy in 10-minute windows, but the rest of the time, I lay staring at the wall across from me, watching the colors shift as the hospital light flickered, the kind of stillness that makes you notice everything, like how the air vent rattled when the building settled, or how your mind starts reciting things you forgot you remembered. My phone was still next to me. I picked it up again, opened the photo Clara posted. Same image, same caption, but this time, I didn't just look, I studied. There was an empty seat at the end of the table. No one commented on it, no one asked who was missing, just beautiful family, and so happy for you. And 37 heart emojis from neighbors and ex-classmates who only knew the version of us Clara allowed them to see. Dad had his arm around her. Mom wore pearls, the ones she saved for church. Everyone smiled like it was tradition, like it had always been this way. Maybe it had. No text, no call, nothing from them. Not even a shallow, "hope you're okay." Not even a lie. You start to realize, it's not forgetting, it's choreography. It's not that they didn't know, it's that they didn't want to pause their performance for me. And then the thought came, sharp and mean. Maybe they were hoping I wouldn't wake up. I didn't let that thought stay long. But it had already scratched something open. When people are gone long enough, You stop wondering where they are. You start inventing reasons that hurt less than the truth. I was scrolling without thinking, notifications, email, junk, when I tapped open the family group chat. At first I thought it had been deleted, but then I saw it. Same participants, different name. The three pillars. No called in, just mom, dad, Clara. No message kicking me out. No explanation, just a renaming. A quiet reorganization of their version of we. I had created the original group. Back when Dad still used emojis like he'd just discovered them. Back when Mom shared blurry church photos and reminded us to pray for Aunt Ray's hip surgery. Back when Clara used to call me kiddo, even though she was only 5 years older. Now, I was just gone. No one had to say it. The deletion wasn't accidental. It was design. I stared at the screen and let it wash over me. A new kind of grief. One where no one died. They just stopped pretending I mattered. It was late. The hallway lights dimmed to a sterile glow. I could hear someone laughing far down the corridor, someone's TV blaring an old sitcom, the kind where families argued over turkey but still hugged at the end. My room was quiet, except for the machines. That ever-present beep, my oxygen tube hissing like a low secret. Then the door creaked. Ezra stepped in. No words. He just placed a bag on the side table, gave me a quick, nervous glance, then left as quietly as he came. Inside the bag were a charger, some socks, a pack of crackers, and a sticky note. We see you. Just that. No signature, no emoji. Just 5 words that landed harder than any apology my family could have faked. I looked at the crackers and felt a knot in my throat. Ezra, a guy I'd known less than 4 months, thought I deserved to be seen. Fed. Remembered. Meanwhile, my sister was selling Unity to a camera crew. I glanced at the muted TV on the wall. Clara, smiling, in a commercial about family strength, talking about how important it is to show up for the ones who matter. I watched myself disappear again, but this time, I wasn't the only one who noticed. Sometimes what saves you isn't blood, it's crackers. When you can't chew. From someone who bothers to ask if you're hungry. There's a kind of mourning no one prepares you for. It's not when someone leaves this world, it's when they're alive and choose to live without you. I remember once, 8 years old maybe, I spent an entire afternoon drawing Clara a birthday card, folded it 3 ways, even added glitter from my school kit. She laughed when she saw it, not at the card, but at me. "You're too sensitive," she said. She never made me one. I almost called Mom. Thumb hovered over her name, but what would I say? Instead, I opened Clara's post again. Without drama, it echoed louder than the birthday balloons in the background. They didn't just ignore me, they erased the idea that I could ever be important enough to include. So I made a silent decision that night. I wasn't going to rage, I wasn't going to beg, but I also wasn't going to stand in the same emotional room anymore, waiting to be handed a chair. I wouldn't demand to be let in, but I'd stop pretending I was already there. It was almost morning when a new nurse came in. Young, chipper, too perky for someone working night shift. She glanced at the chart, then at me. "Oh, you're the one with no visitors." It wasn't cruel, just factual, clinical. I laughed, short, bitter. The sound surprised even me. I wasn't sad anymore, not in the way people assume sadness looks. I wasn't crying, I wasn't breaking, I was just adjusting to the way things really were. I had spent years hoping they'd come around. Turns out, I was circling a table that had already removed my place setting. They made space, just not for me. The morning light didn't come with peace, just clarity. That dry Arizona glow through the hospital blinds didn't soften anything, it just made the silence more obvious. The nurse who came in was new, different tone, less tired. She changed my IV bag, hummed to herself, said something about it being a good day to stretch your legs if you can. I just nodded, even though I couldn't walk yet, let alone stretch, my jaw still locked, throat raw, but I appreciated the try. Then there was a knock, not from staff. It was Ezra. He slipped in like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to. Didn't make eye contact right away. Just carried a paper bag and a phone charger, placed them down beside me on the tray table and stood there, awkward. I tried to say something. All that came out was a wheeze through my teeth. He held up a hand. "It's okay, you don't need to." He started backing toward the door when I noticed the sticky note on the outside of the bag. "We see you." That's it. No name, no flourish, no explanation. And somehow, it landed harder than anything I'd heard since the punch. I didn't tear up. I didn't fall apart. But I did stare at that note like it was the first time someone told me I was real in a very long time. I wanted to ask him why he cared, what made him show up when people with my blood didn't, but he was already gone. Later, after the nurse helped me sit up and got me some soup, I plugged in my phone. It buzzed like it had been waiting all night to complain. 17 missed calls. From work. 0 from family. I opened my inbox out of habit more than curiosity. That's when I saw it. An internal thread, accidentally CC'd to me. I clicked. HR. A string of messages with "Incident, called in Rios." And there it was. "Let's keep the narrative clean," someone wrote. "We don't want liability issues from her side." From her side, like my name wasn't a person. Like I was a risk to be managed, not a human who got knocked to the floor in a room full of witnesses. I closed the email, sat back, let the feeling roll through me, not rage exactly, just that focused kind of burn that doesn't need a fire to know it's real. At some point, I found myself scrolling through my contacts, stopped on Dad, just sat there. I remembered once, 5th grade I think, when he told me, "If anyone ever lays a hand on you, you call me. I don't care where I am." He'd said it like it was a promise, a fact. But when it actually happened, he didn't even ask, didn't call, didn't show, didn't even send Clara. What he did do, though, was smile for pictures, Facebook posts. There he was, in a local church fundraiser, standing next to Clara, shaking hands with the board president. Caption: "So proud of my daughter for leading with grace." Grace? That was the word they always used for her, not me. I didn't call him. I blocked his number, not out of drama. And not out of vengeance, just clarity. Later that afternoon, I sat up straighter in bed and typed out an email. Not a monologue, just facts. Requested a copy of the company's internal report on the assault. Stated that I was speaking to legal aid. Didn't demand, didn't threaten. I ended the email with, "I trust you will handle this professionally. If not, I'll ensure someone else will." I read it over 3 times, then hit send. It wasn't that I wasn't afraid. It was that I was done sitting in fear like it was furniture I'd inherited. I went back to the bag Ezra left. Inside were socks, crackers, a fresh toothbrush, a chapstick, and that note again. "We see you." I held the note for a while, then placed it inside the little drawer beside my bed. Thought about all the times I'd stayed late for the company, covered meetings for people who left early, jumped in without being asked. No one ever said thank you. No one noticed until I was bleeding on the floor. And yet, this intern saw me. Maybe that's all it takes. Not everyone, just someone. I whispered it aloud, low, cracked, quiet. They erased me in silence, but I'm starting to reappear. Then, just to myself, quietly. 2 days had passed, and I still hadn't touched my inbox. But something in me stirred that morning. Not out of curiosity, not even strength, just resolve. I picked up the phone, tapped through the sea of unread. Nothing from my parents, nothing from Clara, just work. Always work. That's when I saw it. An internal thread I shouldn't have been copied on. HR. Subject line: Incident, internal narrative. I read through the thread slowly, jaw still aching but locked in focus. One line stopped me cold. "She's emotional, may not press charges if we show we're handling it. Not she's injured, not she was assaulted. Just emotional. A problem to be contained. A variable to be smoothed over in their polished PR version of events." That email didn't feel like negligence. It felt like strategy. like they were cleaning up around me before I'd even stood up. I opened a blank doc, not for them. For me, just started typing. Dates, times, people. The color of the wall in the room where it happened, the pitch I was presenting, the way no one looked at me after the slap, the way they all stayed still, every detail. I wasn't writing a complaint. I was documenting truth. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a message from Sam, an old coworker. "Heard you left? Hope you're doing okay." I stared at the message, reread it twice. I hadn't left. I hadn't quit. But clearly, someone had said otherwise. I tapped the keyboard slowly. "Who told you that?" He replied almost instantly. "Clara. At the Women in Leadership brunch. She said you'd stepped away, that you needed rest. Burnout, I think?" Burnout. Burnout. I felt my teeth press down against each other. What was left of them? So she was already narrating the next chapter. Without me. She always did that. Even when we were kids. Calden's just tired. She's going through a lot. She needs quiet. All spoken with love. All used as erasers. She never had to scream me into silence. She just taught others to stop listening. I thought back to a team meeting last month. Price had raised his voice at a new intern, young girl, sharp, nervous. He'd cut her off 3 times in 10 minutes, joked about her lack of backbone in front of the whole table. I'd raised my hand, tried to say something about tone, about respect. HR rep smiled tight and said, "Let's keep it constructive, Calden." That was it. Meeting ended. Coffee refilled. Topic dropped. No one looked at me. No one asked her if she was okay. And I went home thinking maybe I should have phrased it better. That memory landed differently now. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't just me. I was loud, but in the wrong language. They only heard what made them comfortable. I returned to the doc I started earlier, titled it Witness Statement. Started adding screenshots, calendar entries, Slack messages, anything. I wasn't ready to send it. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to have it. Named the folder, not erased, typed one sentence out loud in my mind, hearing it as I wrote, "I was assaulted." Saying it felt like a switch flipped, not in the world, in me. I whispered it aloud, just to hear it. If no one else would call it what it was, I would. If no one else recorded the truth, I would. That evening, the hospital was quiet. The hallways dimmed, monitors beeped steady. I stared at the ceiling for a while before shutting the laptop. My eyes burned, not from crying, just from staring too long at something real. This room, this bed, this bandage, this was all small. But inside me, something wasn't small anymore. It was growing. Power. Maybe not the kind they feared, but the kind they couldn't deny much longer. Everyone who'd shaped the story so far, Clara, Price, HR, they did it because I let them. I let them define the silence. Now, I was writing in ink. I wasn't part of their story. But they're about to be part of mine. I waited until the next morning before making the call, not because I wasn't ready, but because I wanted to see if they'd beat me to it. They didn't. So I dialed the number my father had given me years ago, the lawyer he said he trusted. Family First Firm, he called it. The receptionist's voice was warm, almost too pleasant. I gave her my name, told her I'd been assaulted, that I needed legal representation, and my family had referred me to them. There was a pause. Then she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Rios. That time slot is no longer available. It's already been booked." I asked who booked it. She hesitated, then said, "Clara Rios. She's coming in today for a private family matter." Just like that. No room, no offer to reschedule, no recommendation, just a wall where a door used to be. I thanked her, hung up, stared at the call log like it had betrayed me personally. This wasn't coincidence. Clara didn't just take my voice, she'd preempted my next breath. And it wasn't the first time. She'd always known how to frame things before I got the chance. I already talked to Mom. I took care of it. She doesn't need to worry about that now. She didn't need to shout over me. She just spoke first, and louder. They taught me I could ask for help. They never told me I wouldn't be allowed to receive it. Mid-afternoon, a nurse handed me a padded envelope. Said it came in the mail from my company. I opened it slowly, more curious than hopeful. Inside was a bright-colored card with a balloon printed on the front. It said, "Wishing you a speedy recovery." The envelope said, "Leah Turner." Not Calden. Not even close. I opened it anyway. Inside, there were about 10 scribbled signatures. None personal, just names. No message, no note. I laughed, not from joy, not even from bitterness, just disbelief. Even unconscious and wired shut, I was still an afterthought, and not even by name. I leaned back and let the ceiling hold me for a while. Then my brain wandered, back to every time I'd filled in when someone called out, every time I'd fixed a broken presentation last minute, covered for coworkers who forgot their deadlines. No recognition, no follow-up, just silent expectation. Even back in school, it was the same. I remember a piano recital. I was 10. Clara played first, her name announced, her seat adjusted, applause waiting before her fingers touched the keys. Then I played. The principal forgot to say my name. No one corrected him. Afterward, Mom said, "It's okay. You're not the type who needs attention." That stuck with me. I thought silence was humility. Now I know it can also be design. Silence isn't always absence. Sometimes it's a tool. I opened my laptop, pulled up the document I'd been working on, read through it, line by line, added one more sentence. For every time my name was replaced, erased, or ignored, this one's mine. Then I typed, "Signed, Calden Rios." I didn't send it, but it was there, waiting. I looked at myself in the mirror across the room, my face still swollen, my mouth still unable to form most words. But my eyes? They weren't quiet anymore. They knew how to erase me. I was learning how to become unforgettable. Late that night, another notification came through. Local news. Clara, again, interviewed live from the station downtown. Topic: Leading through crisis, one family's story. She stood in front of a camera with ease, posture practiced, voice steady. She smiled, said things like, "Resilience starts with love," and "We all carry burdens, we just try not to make them someone else's." She didn't mention me, not by name, not even indirectly. I didn't react. I just plugged in my headphones, opened my laptop again. Let her talk. I had something to write. And this time, it didn't need her approval. The notification came in around 10 a.m., just as the nurse was replacing my IV bag. A colleague I hadn't spoken to in months texted me, "Just saw Clara on KTRN. She's killing it. You good?" Killing it. I didn't answer. Just opened the station's site and clicked on the live stream. The segment was titled, "Strong Women, Stories of Resilience." Clara stood under those soft studio lights like she'd been born in them. Hair curled just right, eyes lined to look sympathetic. I knew that dress. She wore it to Mom's retirement dinner. Said it made her look relatable. She smiled as she spoke about holding family together through hard times. About the importance of grace when someone you love is struggling. Then she said, "My sibling's going through something right now, and I won't name names because this isn't about drama, it's about choosing strength." My jaw tightened, not because it hurt, because it didn't. She'd taken what happened to me, every bruise, every breath I'd forced through a wired mouth, and turned it into content. I watched her wrap my pain in pastels and call it progress. It wasn't just that she erased me, she stole the story and made herself the hero. I closed the stream, opened an old folder on my desktop, one I hadn't touched since the incident. Inside was a memo I'd drafted weeks before. Internal communication strategy for our team during high-pressure crises. Thoughtful, tight, my best work, attached to it, the final release our company had pushed to the board after the incident. I opened both side by side. Word for word, my draft was used, but the final version, it credited strategic contribution and messaging refinement, Clara Rios. Clara had visited the office 3 days after I'd been hit. She told HR she was there to support the family. Now I knew better. She wasn't there for me. She was there for cleanup. She didn't even need to lie. She just showed up, smiled, offered to help with the language, and they handed her the keys to my work, my voice. I didn't cry, didn't shake, just opened a new document. timestamps, screenshots, Slack messages, project notes, delivery logs. I started compiling it all. Ezra had messaged me the day before the meeting with Price. I asked him to keep an eye on the new intern. He said he'd noticed Price getting short with her too. No one from HR ever replied to that thread. Now Ezra was off client-facing projects. Quietly, no explanation. I wrote that down too. They weren't just silencing me anymore. They were closing ranks, erasing people one conversation at a time. They think silence is invisible, but it leaves fingerprints. I opened a new draft email, not to HR, to legal aid, and 2 journalists I followed for years. Subject line: re-ownership, omission, and assault. I didn't hit send, not yet. This time, the delay wasn't fear. It was strategy. Let Clara enjoy her spotlight. Let her bask in resilience she never earned. I wasn't interested in dragging her name through mud. I was interested in lifting mine out of it. I was learning that you don't always have to punch back. Sometimes you just have to document better than they lie. They had the stage. I had the receipts. That night, around 8:30, my phone pinged with a calendar invite. HR. Subject: confidential. Request for clarification. Internal review. Monday, 9 a.m. I clicked accept, stared at my reflection in the dark screen for a moment after. My face wasn't as swollen anymore, still bruised, still healing, but my expression, sharp, focused. They wanted my silence. This time, I was bringing my story. The call from the nursing home came right after lunch. The nurse didn't say much, just that Grandpa Elias had asked for me, not my parents, not Clara. Me? His voice cracked when he got on, but not from weakness, from age, from knowing. I heard, Calden, he said, not asking if it was true. They didn't see you, but I always did. That was it. He didn't ask what happened, didn't try to justify anyone, just offered me the one thing I hadn't had in days, presence without excuse. I leaned into the pillow, closed my eyes for a second. Why didn't you say something before? A pause. Because it only matters when you say it. When you do, they'll have to hear it. That hit me harder than anything Price ever threw, because I knew it was true. I'd been waiting for someone else to stand up, to call it what it was, but maybe it was mine to name all along. Elias didn't linger, just told me to rest. Said there was something in his old drawer at home, waiting for me. You'll know what to look for. Before I could ask what that meant, he ended the call. By late afternoon, I messaged Ezra. Asked him for a favor, told him where the spare key was hidden, what drawer to check. He didn't ask questions. By 6:30, the journal was in my lap. Brown leather cover, weathered edges, his handwriting inside, tight and clean. He used to have me copy it every summer, page after page of block letters. All caps, he'd say, tapping the pen against the table, so no one can erase it. I flipped slowly through pages of old thoughts, quotes, half-finished letters. Then I found the page he meant. It had been torn, not fallen out, ripped, jagged edges, a clean break. The line stopped halfway. If they ever make you doubt. That's all that remained. Someone didn't want me to read the rest, and I knew exactly who that someone was. I sat with it for a while. Journal on my lap, thumb running the edge of the torn page. And my mind, like it always does when something's missing, filled the blank. 11 years old, I wrote a short story called The Girl Without a Chair. It was for a school project, fiction but not really. A girl who always stood in photos, at lunch, at assemblies, no seat ever saved for her. Clara found it before I turned it in. Too dramatic, she said. Don't give them another reason to say you're sensitive. I tore it up that night, didn't cry, didn't tell anyone, but I stopped writing stories for a long time after that. They taught me young that silence was safety, that if I wanted to stay close, I had to stay quiet. Now, decades later, a page torn from a journal felt like the same hand, just older. Same message. Stay in line. Edit yourself. Be less inconvenient. But this time, I wasn't 11, and I wasn't handing over my voice so easily. Around 8 p.m., Ezra stopped by again. He didn't sit. just stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets. "They pulled me off the client rotation," he said. "No explanation, just a shift in priorities." I nodded slowly. "You think it's because of—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. "They're trying to clean up the picture," I said. "Trim anything that doesn't match the frame." Ezra gave a sad half-smile. Guess I looked too much like someone who knew the truth. It wasn't rage that I felt then. Not the hot kind. It was cold, settled, like steel hardening. Because I realized this wasn't just about me. My silence didn't just erase me. It gave them permission to keep cropping out anyone who didn't fit their story. That night, I opened my laptop and started typing. Same document, same format. But new words. I copied what I remembered of Grandpa's sentence. "If they ever make you doubt." Then I wrote the rest myself. "Let your voice remind them who you are." It didn't matter if it matched what he wrote. What mattered was, it was mine now. And this time, I was printing in all caps. I arrived 15 minutes early, not out of nerves, out of discipline. They needed to see that I wasn't walking in with emotions. I came with facts. The conference room was already filled. HR on one side, legal in the back, a few directors I'd presented to in better times, and then, Clara. I didn't react. Didn't let her presence change my pace. She was seated closest to the window, dressed like a boardroom version of empathy. Light blazer, subtle jewelry, not too flashy, just enough to suggest control. I took my seat at the head of the table, unzipped my bag, pulled out my laptop and a USB. "I'd like to share some slides." The room didn't move, so I clicked. First slide, a project pitch, one I'd drafted 6 weeks ago. Clean graphics, clear data, mine. Next slide. The same content, rebranded, submitted during my absence. On the company letterhead. Final version attributed to internal consultant, Clara Rios. Then I pulled up the metadata. Same file history, same timestamp. My name, deleted, then replaced. I zoomed into the edit trail, showed the room exactly when it happened. HR started to speak. "Calden, we appreciate—" "Please," I said, soft but firm. "Let me finish." Next, I clicked into an audio clip, just 30 seconds long. It was from a recorded session I'd had with Ezra weeks before the incident. One-on-one. Fully legal. Stored for clarity. It started with my voice. "I'm concerned about Price's behavior with the new intern. He interrupted her 5 times in one meeting." Then came Price. "She'll toughen up or wash out. We're not babysitters." The room went silent. I didn't need to explain it. The tone in his voice did the work for me. Then came the emails. Clara, writing to HR the day after I was hospitalized. "I'm happy to assist with messaging around Calden's situation. Let me know what you need from me to keep things stable." There it was again. She didn't steal my story. She positioned herself as the narrator. HR tried to regain control. "We appreciate your perspective, but we'd like to maintain confidentiality." Clara stood up. "Enough," she said. "We've suffered enough embarrassment." I didn't move, but Ezra did. He stood from the back row. "With all due respect," he said, voice even, "she hasn't even started." That cracked something. I clicked the final slide. Hospital records, ER intake, police report, assault code listed clearly, screenshot of the email I'd sent to HR hours before the incident, flagging Price's history, legal intent letter from my counsel, date stamped, no commentary, just receipts. I closed my laptop, didn't smile, didn't flinch. "I know I'm not your ideal employee anymore," I said, "but I never stopped being your responsibility." I turned to Clara. "You said I was the drama," I said, "but drama doesn't come with receipts." The room stayed quiet, no apologies, no applause, but it didn't matter. Because they finally heard me. They couldn't delete that. The morning after the meeting, I woke up to silence. Not the suffocating kind from earlier in the week, but the kind that feels like clean sheets and finally shutting a door that needed to be closed long ago. There was no email from HR, no apology, nothing from Clara. But there were emails from other people. Coworkers, interns, one from a client I hadn't even met in person. Your clarity reminded us why we hired people like you, one read. It didn't undo anything, but it reminded me that not every hallway I walked down was empty. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no cinematic swell of justice, just space. The noise had lowered, the spinning stopped, and maybe, for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Midday, my phone pinged with a Facebook tag. A friend, meaning well, had shared a post featuring Clara's new campaign, a smiling group photo, captioned, "Proud to know someone who leads with love, #family first." I stared at it longer than I should have. Felt the sting, but not like before. It didn't cut this time. It just reminded me what they were still choosing. Image, ease, convenience over confrontation. I didn't reply, didn't comment, didn't reach out to the friend. Instead, I forwarded the post to my attorney, not out of revenge, out of principle. That afternoon, I took a cab to the nursing home. Grandpa Elias was sitting by the window when I arrived, a warm towel across his lap, tea on the side table, still sharp behind the eyes. I handed him a printed copy of my HR statement. He didn't read it aloud, just nodded, held it in both hands. "That's your voice on paper," he said. "You made them hear it." We didn't talk about the company, or Clara, or family. We talked about old movies, about how Tucson used to smell like dust and orange peels before the city filled up with traffic and tourists. Before I left, I pulled the 8-spoke pendant from my coat pocket. "I thought I needed this to feel connected," I said. He looked at me, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Turns out," I continued, "I was always at the center." I placed it in his hand. Not as surrender, as closure. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. The next morning, HR emailed, Jonas Price was placed on indefinite leave. The company would be reviewing internal procedures. No public announcement, no press. Clara's name was nowhere in the message. Funny how silence felt different when it wasn't directed at me. I didn't reach out to my parents, didn't check to see if they knew. If they did, they didn't say. And for once, I didn't feel pulled to care. I started walking again, cooking for myself, nodding to neighbors, laughing sometimes, without remembering I was allowed to. Peace didn't look like a breakthrough. It looked like putting the trash out on time and making a decent cup of coffee. That night, I opened a blank document. Titled it, "Not Just the Punch." I wrote the first line, "They broke my jaw, but not my story." Then I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let my fingers write without fear of being edited. Some families are born, others are chosen, and sometimes the one you choose is the one who showed up when everyone else didn't. They erased me once. I wrote myself back in, with ink they can't wash off.